Hi, my name is Anneli Portman, and in this lesson of Finnish political culture and system, we will look at political parties. What did the voters in Finland do last year? Well, they voted in an array of different parties and party members into the parliament, and you can see from the color codes how many parties get in. What are these parties like? Well, that we will see later, but first of all, you can see that the latest party support shows a different picture from what you will see a little bit later on. So, how popular a party is a fluctuating thing. Usually, what they stand for is more stable. The largest party is the Center Party, as it was during the elections. And the least supported one are the Christian Democrats, as they were in the last election. But let's look at what is really inside the parties in Finland. The special features of the whole system here is that there's a very high degree of fragmentation. There are many parties represented in the parliament, and actually the Finnish system is one of the most fragmented in Western European countries. Also, no one party is larger than all the others, which means that the parties have to cooperate with one another. And there's an increasing weakness of the leftist parties. Their support is in decline. Now, their combined support is around 40%. Leftist parties have 46 seats in the 200 seats of the parliament. The Finnish party system also displays an amazing stability of the strength of the Center Party. Its agrarian roots means that it has, for decades, occupied a very center position in the agrarian, more rural voters, and has been able to maintain that regardless of the people moving more to the cities. Also, there is an absence of a single liberal party. The Greens and the Swedish People's Party occupy sort of the liberal stance, but there is no one party that would profile itself as a completely liberal party. In Finland, it is very rare for a single party or for an electoral alliance to win majority of the votes, even within one single electoral district. And no party has ever won a majority of the seats in the parliament. The closest is 28.3% by the Social Democrat Party. So what are the parties like then here in Finland? There are 10 registered parties. 8 of these registered parties are currently in the parliament, and of these, 3 are in the government. The 3 in the government are the Center Party, the Finns, and National Coalition Party. How do these parties differ from one another? Well, there is no religious cleavage, for one. Traditionally, parties were differing from one another on the left and right dimension. Now, rural-urban or center-periphery divide has become much more important, and that is again linked to the preference for national sovereignty versus preference for international alliances. Economic growth and nature conservation is another source of cleavage. And if you think back on the values that were talked about in the first lesson, you can understand why these two form a dimension along which people differ in their opinions. Liberalism and conservatism also is now dividing parties differently than they used to be before. And lastly, but not least importantly, the attitudes about bilingualism in Finland also divide the parties. This is a chart that was made in 2013, but it still expresses quite well the division of the parties. So they can be divided along the left and right dimension, but also along the dimension of whether they support socialism or capitalism, conservatism or liberalism. The Finns are in this chart in two places because the party's ideological fragmentation. But here you can see that the most conservative party is not the National Coalition, but is the Christian Democrats. And the ones who are most liberal are the Greens and the Swedish Folk Party. As to the Social Democrat Party, it is closer to the center than it is to left. One of the voting advice applications did a what-if stance and found out that if there were only two parties, even today, the main cleavage would be left to right. If there were three parties instead of all the 8 we have, the main cleavages would be along the lines of whether they support or are against the EU, whether they uphold liberal or conservative values, or green versus not green values.